How you doing, everyone? Greetings and welcome to episode 9, the very last episode of learning bAtari BASIC. Although I will do an episode where we'll have a look at that Bob code so that we can go through that, and I'll release that code and you can play around with it to your heart's content. But today's episode is pretty much to thank you for watching the series up until now, and also to let you know about a couple of extra bits and pieces that we can do using bAtari BASIC that I didn't really have the time to go into in this series, or to be honest, I don't know a whole lot about because I haven't used it. The series itself kind of revolved around Bob the betenticled hedgehoctopus and that game. And everything we've covered in the last 8 episodes is everything I've pretty much used to bring that game into existence. So when we go through the code, I don't think there's too much extra in there that we haven't covered. You know, I think I've pretty much covered everything to make a game. And what this episode is to do is pretty much, like I said, to go through some of the extra functionality and just let you know it exists. And I would push you on in the direction of Random Terrain, this website, pretty much in order to expand on any of this stuff and any of the stuff I covered as well in the previous episodes. It's a fantastic site, and it's where I learned absolutely everything I know about bAtari BASIC. So anyway, what I'd like to say is that we have been using the standard kernel in order to write any of the stuff that we wrote in bAtari BASIC. Now, there are 3 kernels available to us when we're writing a bAtari BASIC program. And basically what a kernel is it's kind of a little core program block that contains pretty much the I/O system, or what would be a BIOS really inside of a regular PC, but for the Atari 2600. And it's the reason why when we're writing bAtari BASIC programs, we don't have to worry about television refresh rate. We don't have to tell the Atari how, at the very basic level, to respond when a joystick is pushed. All that kind of stuff is done for us. It's been written in assembly language, and it's in a core or a kernel that's there, that's used and integrated with our little bAtari BASIC program we're writing. So we've been using the standard kernel right the way along. So that's the kernel that will allow us to have 2 players on screen and whatever restrictions we were pretty much playing around with when we were writing any of this code. Now, there are 2 other kernels available to us. There's the multi-sprite kernel, which does pretty much what it says it does. Instead of having just 2 players on screen, we can have up to 6. But there is a price to be paid with that. For example, before we could write, or we could set backgrounds, like I did in Bob. There's a fireflies thing written on the screen before you start the game. Well, using the multi-sprite kernel, you couldn't really do that because you can only set one half of the screen and then the other half is mirrored. So you're losing a bit of control on the backgrounds. And as far as I know, you're losing a missile as well when you use that kernel. So for everything we gain, there's usually something that has to be paid when we're using any kind of computer system. And the multi-sprite kernel, we need to pay for it in some functionality for the little bits that we gain. There's also a DPC plus kernel, which is much more powerful, and it'll let us have up to 10 sprites on screen. And usually when we're using the multi-sprite kernel or the standard kernel, we only have 26 variables available to us, so variables A through Z. But with the DPC plus kernel, I usually say DCP, but anyway, with the DPC plus kernel, you get 48 extra variables. So you say, well, why don't you use that all the time? It sounds fantastic. Now, I'm sure it is. I've never used it, but the thing is, if you want to use it on real hardware, you need a special cartridge capable of doing that. It needs an extra processor inside in that cartridge so that it can handle all these extra variables and whatnot. Inside in an emulator like Stella, it'll work away fine. But anything I was doing, I wanted to be able to use it on real hardware afterwards. That was the reason I never really touched on that. The other things that are available to us when we're using any of these kernels are modules, or I think they're called mini kernels as well, or modules. And what they are their little assembly programs that we can include in our bAtari BASIC program. and it'll give us extra functionality. So a quick example of one is, I think there's a 3 lives and a 6 lives module available. So for example, you would define a sprite and you'd have your game all set up. And if you wanted, for example, that your player had 3 lives, and each time he lost a life, you know, he'd lose a life and whatever, like a game generally works. Well, you can stick this module in, and what it'll do for you is down the bottom of the screen, it'll put 3 little mini versions of your main sprite. And every time you lose a life, it'll knock one away. So you've got a little life counter there without doing any real extra work. You just import this little kernel module. So there's that kind of stuff available to you as well. Also, there are kernel options that you can set when you're starting writing your bAtari BASIC program. So for example, it's very easy to set a program so it'll run on a PAL system or on an NTSC system or on a CCAN system. All you have to do is set TV mode. I think it's set kernel options TV mode to PAL or NTSC or whatever you want. There's a whole list of these things on the Random Terrain website, and it can really make your program kind of spring to life, you know, with these little modules and whatnot. But it makes sense really, because the thing about bAtari BASIC is that bAtari BASIC, I believe, wasn't originally written in order to make it easy to write Atari games. I believe it was written to kind of aid with the learning of assembly language. And the thing is, when you type your code and you compile it, not only do you get a binary file that you can run on an Atari or in an emulator, but you also get a few other files. And one of them is an ASM file, which is actually an assembly language listing of the code you just typed in BASIC. So if you wanted to know, how do I do this particular thing in assembly, you can write a little program in bAtari BASIC, compile it, and look at that ASM file. It'll show you pretty much how you can write that in assembly. So it's a great tool that way as well, to slip into assembly language programming. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty much this. So just let me thank everybody who's watched the series up until now. And I know that a number of people have been in contact with me and said that they've started writing their own games. And there's even 1 or 2 people who have even ventured into assembly language from starting with a few of these, and then ventured into assembly language to start learning that as well for the Atari 2600. And hats off to you on that, guys. But no, really, I'm touched and I'm humbled, and I am honored that this has inspired people to go ahead and learn programming, because me, myself, 16 months ago, or yeah, 18 months ago when I started this, I knew nothing about programming. bAtari is a gateway drug. It really is. But yeah, no, it's been fantastic. Just let me, before I sign off and before I say that's it, just let me mention 1 or 2 sites that I think you should check out. Number 1, Random Terrain, as I always said, listed in absolutely every description of any video I've made down below. Check him out. It is the ultimate resource for all things bAtari, and everything I've been showing you, that's where I've got that from. 8bit as well, on YouTube. He's a guy who doesn't do bAtari BASIC at all, but he does assembly language programming. He's got all kinds of examples, all kinds of listings, all kinds of programming. And if you're into the Atari 2600, if you want to learn how to program it, the guy knows what he's talking about. It's presented in a nice kind of manner that's easy to listen to and makes sense. Well, for the most part anyway, that I can understand of it. But yeah, it's a channel well worth checking out, 8bit. And there's one other guy, William J Meyer, who was in contact with me, and he decided through this to try and make his own game. And he's already 3 episodes into, if I can pronounce this right, he's got a series going called Making Telemachus. I think it's called Making Telemachus. Maybe it's Telemachus, I'm not sure. But it's a game that he is making for his Atari 2600. And there's actually some of the stuff here that I've done, he explains it 1,000,000 times better than I did. Go watch his stuff too. So check out those sites, and I don't know if I mentioned it yet or not, but Bob came third place in, I think I did mention it though, I don't know. I'm after doing so many takes at this stage, I don't know where I am. Anyway, just to say again, if I didn't say it in this video yet, Bob and the Alien Fireflies came third place in the Atari Age 0-page homebrew Game of the Year Awards. It won in the ports original less than 4K section, and yeah, it came giant third place, and thank you to everybody who voted for it. So with that being said, there will be one more episode where I'll go through all the code of Bob, and it'll probably be a long episode. To be honest with you, I have to look over the code again because I've forgotten everything that's in it, but I'll make that episode pretty soon and put it out, and I'll make that code available as well so that you can use it, modify it, do what the heck you want with it. And yeah, until the next, well, there won't be any more episodes in that, but until the next regular 8-Bits in the Basement episode, I bid you all a fond farewell. Thanks very much for watching, and best of luck to anybody who decides to try their own Atari 2600 game. Let me know about it if you do. I'd love to play anybody's games. Talk to you very soon. Bye bye. Okay, we'll start that recording, and we will démarrer. Shows the aperçu. Excellent. Look, it's demarred. So I'm going to arrest the aperçu and minimize. Okay.